What are your general thoughts about what transpired in the debate?
Obviously, it's a new and different debate po. Mas masigla po ng konti ang nangyari sa gabing ito. Hindi na po si Presidente Biden ang tumapat kay President Trump. But I think the good issue here is what President Trump said in his last statement, about Kamala Harris is, why hasn't she done this? She's been there since day one. She's campaigned on the same issues and talking about a new way forward. This is the same notion that President Biden said that he will unite the nation. And 4 years later, it's still divided as it is. So I think tama po kayo, Sir Ronald, sa inyong discussion there na hindi po pwedeng tamaan po ni Vice President Kamala Harris, President Biden, dahil yan po ang boss nila. But in reality, she can't separate herself from him either, because what those policies are her policies. Don't forget, she was the tie-breaking vote in a lot of those issues, in a lot of those legislation that passed that caused us to where we are now. So as much as they can talk about what they are doing, what they've done, they've had the opportunity to do that, and the reality is still here. And you are absolutely right in your in your assessment when it comes to the swing states, and those are the folks that we have to really reach out to. And in terms of the independent and the swing voters, we're also thinking about those low propensity voters that never participated in elections before. Na sana po ngayon ay it gets them an opportunity to come out and even vote, and to tie that in sa Filipino community natin, so those are the folks that we also want to reach out to, because in the swing states of like Nevada and Arizona, those are issues that are very, very prominent to their minds, the cost of the living and cost of the economy there now. And so I think that it's been a good debate now. It's a little, it's kind of funny to me that Vice President Kamala Harris has talked about multiple times how she's had a plan, but in reality, she released those plans last night, the day before the debate, when she's had 50 days of a honeymoon that is very scripted and not been able to really face the public and scrutinize what her positions are, except for tonight. So I think it's been a very informative debate, but I think that we are still strong. I think President Trump showed his strength again as his incumbency there. People know how he is and what his temperament can be. But I do believe that he struck the tone in a lot of this debate that is positive for him in his campaign.
Now, I'd like to ask from the Democratic side, do you think this is going to be an uphill battle with regards to, like what Richard said, like Amar Rojas' issue? Can Vice President Kamala Harris detach herself from Joe Biden without throwing him under the bus?
I think Kamala Harris 100% tonight has actually shown that she is her own unique individual and is completely separate from Joe Biden. As she said tonight, I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Donald Trump, but I am myself. I'm Kamala Harris and I have a plan. And one thing very interesting that she outlined in her plan, and I felt that similar to last debate with President Biden, is that she beat President Trump on the policy front, where she had concrete policies. She just released her plan, and even just today, the Harris-Walz campaign just released their Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander fact sheet. Yet, President Trump's campaign has not. And so, Vice President Harris has outlined every single thing that's made her different, especially the policies that she differs from President Biden on. And with all the conversation of why didn't she do it when she was in office, it's the same reason why we as employees sometimes don't have our own individual freedoms when we are led by our own boss. And now she has the opportunity to inaugurate those changes. The same argument can even be made for Trump. Why didn't he do it when he was in office? Why is he doing it now? And so those arguments are really invalidated, because we can always just go back to an incumbent and say, why didn't you do it? When in reality, as Vice President Harris said, we're not going back, but we have to turn a page forward.
Richard?
We have another guest, right?
Yeah, I'd like to ask, let's talk about healthcare this time. Kamala Harris has VP Kamala Harris has made it clear that for the meantime, she is going on with Obamacare, but an improved version of it. President Donald Trump couldn't present a clear and concise plan for healthcare. He just merely stated that he will sustain and make it better for the meantime. Now, what is your take on who do you think nailed the issue on improving healthcare?
I think it's really important when we talk about healthcare to understand that when it comes to the United States, we spend the most amount of money per person on healthcare, despite having far worse standard and quality of care compared to most other developed countries. And so it is a reminder that while Obamacare was a really important step forward in terms of the healthcare outcomes for Americans, we're still very much underperforming. And so having a plan is better than no plan. And it is very clear that Donald Trump is completely ill-equipped to be able to actually move us towards a more sustainable healthcare future. But I also want to really make sure that we're pushing Democrats that we can't simply settle for being better than the Republican Party. We actually have to push for true universal healthcare that really makes sure that all Americans, regardless of their class status, their zip code, their geography, or their race, is able to have high-quality healthcare, including dental, including vision, all sorts of high-quality support that we need for our daily lives. And I think that's the trajectory we need to get Americans onto. It's something that we're still rather far away from.
We would like to know their view about the closing remarks of these two presidentials.
In terms of just to rebut real quick, I think that he brings up a good point. And if you think about the vice presidential pick, and you said it can win you or it can lose you, but if you think about the standpoint of why they picked J.D. Vance, and talking about hillbilly elegy and those stories and the reality of those situations, right? Those are what's happening in the Midwest. And so as much as we can kind of laugh at it and kind of poke at it and might not be real, I mean, J.D. Vance went to school at Ohio State on a GI Bill and then went to Yale because of his success in Ohio State. And so now we attack him for succeeding too much. And so if that's a problem in those communities, that's the same reason why those people feel disenfranchised within those flyover states, within the Rust Belt. And I do believe that story is going to carry a lot more in terms of communicating to the voters in Pennsylvania, prospectively. I think that, Kamala Harris would have, if she really focused on winning in terms of the Electoral College, I would pick Josh Shapiro and lock down Pennsylvania, it's all going to come down to Pennsylvania. So those are some electoral parts that we have to think about. And so, I do believe it all comes down to Pennsylvania as much as for a electoral path. In terms of the closing remarks, I do believe that President Trump said it the best, right? In terms of Kamala sounded really great, rehearsed, Hollywood and the Obama folks has really done a great job on preparing her for this debate in terms of future sound bites and ads. But in terms of the reality of the situation, the reality of what people are feeling in terms of the pocketbook issues, the economy, there's crime and safety, and the inflation. I think Donald Trump has made the best part and says, why haven't you done it before, and why start now? Why are you just now doing this? And so that is a good conversation, and that is what is on the minds of the folks that are in the swing states. And so, my final message sa ating mga kababayan in all of the states that are affected, please do your due diligence na aralin nyo talaga kung sino ang talagang better na candidate para sa inyo, para sa inyong community, para sa inyong pamilya. Yun ang pinaka-importante na message, I think, na kailangan natin ipaalam sa ating mga Filipino voters. Tends to be Filipino voters are not one of the best in the Asian community in terms of turning out. So I really challenge our community to turn out and really make your voice heard in this upcoming race. And I do believe in terms of economical issues, can't go wrong with the Republican Party. So why not give it a try?
Let's get insights from the Democrat side. Let's get your insights first, Joshua, on the remarks of the candidates earlier.
Yeah, I think when can't go wrong with the Republican Party forgets a lot of the failed economic policies from Ronald Reagan onward that have led to a massive wealth transfusion to the richest 1% and away from working class communities. And so we have a track record of conservative economics extracting from the working class, including in all of these states from the Rust Belt down to the border states to all the coasts, right, where you were seeing that economic extraction leaving our communities struggling, right? And so I think for me, we've seen the kind of tried and true failures of the trickle down and conservative economic agenda, the tax cuts for the wealthy, not the working class. And whatever this debate as a form of style does for you, it doesn't really change the fact that the underlying economic theory behind both the kind of old Republican Party conservatives and the new MAGA conservative Republican Party, neither of those have ever been shown to sustainably uplift the working middle class successfully, and instead have been one of the most powerful vehicles for wealth generation for the richest in human history, right? And so I don't think that a Kamala Harris administration would fundamentally change that system, right? But I do think that it would be far less harmful on a day-to-day basis for our paychecks, for our lived experiences, for our ability to sustain ourselves. And so that ultimately is the choice, right? It is a short-term choice, harm reduction, in my view, to select Kamala Harris now. But when it comes to long term, we need a more inspirational, progressive agenda that structurally changes the United States to genuinely provide for all its community members, not simply for the wealthy, and not simply, leaving us to work and blame each other fractiously the way that the MAGA movement has lately. And so I think that we, as voters, have everything we need to know right now as Americans, right? What matters now for the next, several weeks, couple months, is who is actually turning out voters, who's doing that ground game, that day-to-day work, canvassing, phone banking, putting in the time and effort, because there's only so much you can do on a national platform. It comes down to our neighborhoods and our communities. And that's going to be the difference more than anything that is said between the two candidates from here on out to November.
What about Gabriel?
So, Kamala Harris's most famous quote from her campaign is, "Did you just think you fell out of a coconut tree? We exist in the context of everything that came before us." And I mention that because that relates to us as Philippines too, where we constantly remind ourselves of Jose Rizal's quote of, "Those who don't look back at the past are doomed to repeat it." So no history, no self, but knowing history, you know yourself. And that's what Kamala Harris does. She talks in her closing statement about, we are not going back again. We saw what a Trump admin already looked like. And so if we saw what a Trump admin already looked like, why would we be doomed to repeat it again? Kamala Harris introduced actual policy and the numbers to this policy within her closing statement. She talked about creating an opportunity economy, one that has the dreams and hopes for the American people. On the other hand, all Trump can say is nothing original from himself, but instead a rebuttal to everything that she said, because she has substance. She talks about the $6,000 child tax benefit for parents to be able to start, or even the $125,000 tax benefit for small businesses as well. And so Kamala Harris even really emphasized a new vision of leadership moving forward. While Trump is one, as the Republicans love propping up, as a macho man, someone who's willing to be aggressive and defend America against everything, Kamala, on the other hand, is a leader of unity and one who's doing the best to bring everyone together. Even her closing statement about what her previous job was as a lawyer, she didn't ask if they were a Democrat or Republican, whereas Trump literally says he doesn't want any of Nikki Haley's constituents. Kamala Harris asks if you're okay. Again, one is a lawyer, one is a convicted felon. She wants to be a president for all Americans and focus on what can be done for the next 10 or 20 years. And finally, most importantly, I think I recognize my male privilege as a guy here and my own say, but I don't think I should have a choice over what a woman does with their own body as well, or someone's own sexuality. And so therefore, Kamala Harris is a woman. She understands the attack on women's rights and also the restrictions on freedoms that Trump, who proudly states that he gave it back to states' rights, versus the social contract of government protecting people's rights. Kamala Harris understands what it means for the federal government to make sure that women's rights is protected as a woman. And I recognize that I don't know what it's like to be a woman, but she does. And no president in history understands what it's like to be almost 50% of the country. And I think it's time for a refreshing change. And as Kamala Harris says, she is a new leader for the future, and that is the refreshing change we need.